What is good, Tsla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down why tomorrow is going to be another important day as we have the PPI report coming out, not to mention some IPOs and initial jobless claims. But before I do anything like this, before I talk about all this data coming out for tomorrow, give you guys a warning about the markets, then talk about this new IPO and how all of this is affecting Tesla and these different tickers, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer is very soon, in just about 1 day, so it ends tomorrow. Don't forget to check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with Tesla and the market. Tesla's starting to cool off just a tiny bit as of right now, but it's nothing too significant. The market has been quite flat for most of the day. Now, what happened was CPI came out, the market dropped initially during the pre-market, then we ended up opening and the market got a nice little pop. This ended up being a very nice liquidity grab by many institutions and etc. And then we ended up seeing Tesla in the market fall temporarily, only to be bought right back up and just continue to trade sideways. Tesla's been pretty much just flat since then. I think the same thing could be said about SPY, as we've been stuck in our range, except SPY, it actually pumps a little bit more, but it just remained pretty flat for most of the day as well. So nothing too crazy has happened so far. Now for tomorrow, we have more data dropping. I just want to talk about that first before I break down what happened. For tomorrow, just as a reminder, we have the PPI reports coming out. This is similar to CPI, except this tends to be a leading indicator for CPI. So if PPI is hotter than expected, there's a risk of a hot CPI coming out for the next month. If not, if it's just as expected, that's a good sign for CPI once again. That's going to be very important 1 hour before the market opens. And PPI, by the way, is another important inflationary measure from the producer side. It's kind of like CPI, except from the producer side. Anyways, we also have initial jobless claims coming out an hour before the market opens, and this data may cause some volatility. It really depends on the extent of it. If it's like harder than expected, there's going to be a big move. If it's lower than expected, there could be a big move. If it's aligned with expectations, it could cause some volatility too. But if it's just nothing too crazy, though, then at the same time, we could see a day just like this where the market just doesn't really do anything too crazy. So anything could happen depending on the data. That's why you want to be prepared. You want to watch it just to be safe. We also have initial jobless claims and etc. When it comes to CPI, just as a reminder, most of the data was pretty much aligned with expectations, except some of the metrics, such as core month over month, was a little bit hot, and so was the year over year inflation. It rose a little bit hotter than expected. Just by a tiny bit. It was 3.7% versus the 3.6% expectation. So very close to expectations, but nothing too insane. The reason why the market is still holding up quite nicely after CPI came out, even if it was a tiny bit hotter, is because these headlines, these articles were saying that the Fed is not going to likely adjust their policies based off this tiny little increase. It was so minor that they're saying it's nothing to be too worried about. And the market was happy about that because the Fed may not be as hawkish once again. So that's kind of like how the market's interpreting this. Nothing too crazy. And that's completely fine. It's whatever the market wants. Now, for tomorrow, there's also an IPO coming out for ARM or ARM. This is pivotal for the chip production. And this is going to be very interesting to witness. There's going to be a lot of hype for the AI stocks. We're starting to see Nvidia pump as a result of this. This is, once again, the UK chip designer. This is going to be a big valuation, so we'll see what happens with this. And it's going to be very interesting to witness. So if you're interested, IPO starts very, very soon, and it's going to be very fun to play. Anyways, when it comes to the market, what's going on with the charts right now? And I just want to talk about tomorrow as well. So on the 4 hour time frame, SPY is not really looking too bad. It's very flat, been going back and forth and back and forth. And we were basically stuck between these EMAs. I was calling this out in the morning. If we were bullish, we want to see it break above our 20 EMA. If we're bearish, we want to see it break below the 50. We actually held above the 50 since we opened and started pushing. That was a bullish confirmation. And that's why the market was favoring the bulls a little bit more. We also saw the market hold up after we got some good news. And as of right now, the market is cooling off just a little bit, but it's still not looking too horrible overall. So we're going to be watching support now. We got rejected on 447.5, so watch that as resistance. And right now, support, the one we're about to test, is around 446.5. That's the more significant support. That's very close to our 50 EMA right about here. So we're going to be watching that very carefully. That's where the actual key support is based off this level. And for now, I think the market's not going to do anything too crazy. I still think we're just going to be range trading for most of the day, unless there's some other piece of news. For Tesla, it just range traded for the majority of the day. We're basically stuck in this range. If you look at the 5 minutes time frame, now for tomorrow, if we get a hot PPI, if PPI is too hot, that's going to show signs that inflation may increase for the next report. Then Tesla could cool off and retest 266 or drop below that. If we get a decent PPI, which I think is most likely going to be the case, we might see Tesla start pushing again towards 275, if not 278. Now, what do I think is more probable? Based off technicals, they're starting to shift because the VIX is actually giving us a different signal. The VIX is looking like it's trying to fill this gap down here. So remember how there's this big gap down here on the VIX around 13? This is looking like it's going to try to fill this gap down here. It might fill this gap very soon, start tanking very, very soon. And if that ends up being the case, the market may actually uptrend a little bit more. So that tells me that we may get a decent PPI for tomorrow. Now, I'm not promising anything. I don't truly know. I'm just letting you guys know that there's a good chance we may see some upside thanks to that. And we could see SPY try to push towards like the more bullish case. If we're bullish tomorrow, SPY is going to try to go to 448, by the way, or higher, approach basically like 449. If we're bearish tomorrow, we're going to see this thing start tanking towards 444 all the way down there. My guts tells me it's going to hold up. There is one thing that could cause downside for like maybe a little bit later into the future, going into like Friday, if not by next week, and that's because of the fact that Aapl technically has a head and shoulders that is developed on it. Let me just show you this on the 4-hour time frame. There could be some downside coming later on. It may not happen as soon as tomorrow, but later on by the end of this week, if not by next week, there could be a slight drop in Aapl. We have a head and shoulders forming. So if Aapl does end up dropping like this could slow SPY down just a little bit. So I just want to warn you guys about this for SPY and the QQQ for like, I would say the next couple of days. It doesn't have to be tomorrow specifically. And the VIX tells us that the market may actually bounce tomorrow. So maybe Aapl bounces a little bit before this thing starts dropping to form kind of like an inverse cup and handle. So I hope that's as clear as possible. There's a risk of some downside over the next couple of days, but for tomorrow specifically, the market has potential to hold up and try to bounce because of how the VIX is looking. So that's what I'm seeing on SPY and also on Tesla. That's what like some technicals are starting to suggest. Tesla ended up actually failing to get a bearish cross on the PPO and start trying to hold up a lot better. So we're going to be watching Tesla kind of range trade tomorrow and then react to PPI. I also want to add that when it comes to the QQQ, this is kind of just trading sideways around this 375 area. Uh, in my opinion, I'm still going to be very open-minded to see what happens tomorrow. A very, very decent PPI could push this thing towards 377. And if PPI is hot, we're going to see this thing sink towards 372 and maybe even below that. Overall, it looks like it's just going to remain sideways for the rest of today. Then we're going to be watching the reaction after PPI, initial jobless claims, and all those things come out. Same thing with Nvda. Nvidia has more potential for upside because there's starting to be a micro change in the market structure just temporarily. We formed a bullish divergence. I was talking about this on Nvidia, but I wasn't sure it was going to play out just yet because we were just waiting for it. Now with the IPOs coming out for the chip stocks, this is helping Nvidia try to make an attempt to bounce. So this thing has this potential to retest this like 460 area by tomorrow if we get a decent PPI and if there's a lot of hype and it keeps on remaining bullish, we could see it try to establish a change in market structure. Now, what I mean by that is we've been making lower lows and lower highs. We just made a new high. We have to establish a higher low and then start pushing higher. So watch for a little bounce. A drop then a bounce on Nvidia, and overall it looks like it may uptrend just a little bit temporarily. Now, with all of that said, we're going to be watching the VIX to see if this thing ends up filling the gap or not. It looks to me like it might fill this gap down here, so it's starting to look weaker, and that could be because of the market potentially pushing thanks to a decent PPI. Now, can I promise that? The answer is not necessarily. I can't promise anything, but it is a real possibility. The dollar is also starting to just downtrend a little bit. It's very flat. If the dollar cools off more, this could be another good signal. The market structure is looking a tiny bit more bearish. It's just barely holding the 50 EMA. So if that breaks finally, that's going to be our very, very good signal. Anyways, guys, I just want to thank you all so much for listening. Now, my warning for everyone is that we don't know what's going to happen with PPI. So we don't know if the market's going to gap up or gap down. We don't know if some big move is going to come. That's why I just want to warn you to be very careful. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow with initial jobless claims and PPI. And I personally closed my options. I'm not really holding anything, maybe just a few positions, but maybe like one or two, but some very, very tiny positions overnight just for fun. Otherwise, I would not risk way too much. I'm primarily holding cash on my options accounts. I am holding long-term shares, of course. I'm still holding on to my Tesla shares and etc. I'm just talking about my options, right? So I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm managing risks very carefully, and I'm going to be re-entering some very fresh charts for tomorrow after we get all the data that's out. All right. So with that said, thank you for listening. I hope this video was helpful. Be prepared for PPI and etc. And I'll see you guys in the next one in the next couple of hours. Thank you and peace out.